everyone. Good to see you all. Day 18. So right off the bat, all of this stuff comes from like a proto-Hindu culture, right? And so Hinduism, if you're unfamiliar, there's a few religions of India, but Hinduism, at least sort of holds some form of dominance, and it's a particularly ancient religion and particularly rich. Its metaphor is rich, its imagery is rich, its concepts are deep, and very well articulated. And so there's one particular image within Hinduism that I want to narrate for you and describe for you, because it will prove to be valuable for the opening discussion, which might not really relate to you specifically, but may relate to some of you intensely. And so the image is this: Vishnu, the god of preservation, essentially a blue man with multiple arms. He's laying on an ocean, floating on a multi-headed serpent. The serpent is called Adisesh, and then the ocean represents Maya. The ocean represents the illusory nature of reality in a physical sense, because everything is always changing, right? None of us are going to be here in 100 years, so we will cease to exist in literal form, as if we never existed at all. And Earth one day will be consumed by the sun in however many millions or billions of years, and in that the Earth will essentially disappear, be wiped off the physical face of the universe. So this is sort of the illusory experience of reality in a truly physical sense. But in a psychological sense, we only perceive what we perceive. We operate through a very narrow and myopic field of perception and vision. Even our senses can't behold the full spectrum of sound and light and touch and taste and so on and so forth. And so we are limited. And what we are limited to is changing in front of us, so illusion. And so this is what this god, Vishnu, the god of preservation, is floating upon. And the ambition of yoga, in a certain sort of way, is to overcome that illusion, to overcome that limitation, to overcome our myopic misperception and behold at its grandest hope, the full vision of reality, but at least a more expansive and sort of wider vision of reality. And so this is Vishnu floating on top of that ocean. But he floats upon Adisesh. He floats upon a multi-headed serpent. And the serpents, throughout all religions have been worshipped because they were feared. Humans have this brilliant capacity to sort of divinize what they are most fearful of. And so serpents hold a really powerful place within our imagination and within our religions and on our ideals. So Adisesh means, Adi is the first and Sesh is remainder. So Adisesh is the first remainder. He is that which was there before the beginning, and he is that which will be there before the end. In Hinduism, right, it holds unique wisdom. Ultimately, it teaches the yogi or the devotee that worshiping and embracing that which we fear, a multi-headed serpent, is the key to the game. And that if you do not embrace it, that fear will exist before you exist and will exist after you exist. Essentially, it's warning the seeker that if you don't do anything about this, it will stay with you forever and ever and ever until you do. But once you do, that image, that serpent, will be your salvation and will pull you above Maya. It will pull you above your misperception. Okay, it's a really beautiful thing. And when you open the newsletter today, maybe tomorrow, I'll sort of attach an image of this so you can actually see it. It's a really, beautiful design and an enchanting metaphor. So why am I saying this? I've gotten quite a few emails, and I know, through my history of teaching this and practicing this, that the main reason why people stop or refuse to practice is because of this emergence of unprecedented anxiety. And if we are open with ourselves, we will acknowledge that it is anxiety, and we'll have a lot of insight onto, the emotional sort of consequences. But if we're not, and none of you here are because you're participating, but a lot of the times when breath work is introduced, especially to yogis and to like yoga studios, the visceral reaction is, I just don't like it. Blanket statement. And there's no real curiosity as to why, but the real reason why is because these techniques literally activate the sympathetic nervous system and extract adrenaline and extract the emotions of fear and extract the emotions of worry and doubt and insecurity from our biology. And to confront that is, of course, uncomfortable and scary, but this is sort of the meat and bones of what yoga represents as a lifestyle and as a philosophy. We must look into the problem. We must look into fear. And the best place to look into it is where it manifests. Atha, right? I think we talked about this yesterday or a few days ago. Atha. All of reality manifests from within us, not outside us. And so the secondary point is, I'll explain the point in terms of like a yogic attitude, which doesn't really line up entirely with the physicality, the truth of it. But the point in terms of yoga is that you do not fear the technique. The technique is innocent. You're just breathing. You're just huffing and puffing. You're essentially just experiencing sensation. And your capacity to lock onto the tingling and buzzing, right? I hope you all can feel that. But if you can, it takes a little bit of time to feel. But if you can lock onto the tingling and buzzing and focus entirely on that, your thoughts will dissolve. And what you will find is that what you perceive as anxiety, what you perceive as fear, what you perceive as a quickening of your biological rhythms is actually just this vibration. And that this vibration, sort of removed of your concepts of it, is actually enlivening and enriching and exciting. Anxiety is a word just, to feed the conversation. Doesn't necessarily connect to like negativity. Anxiety is just an excitement for what is to come. And so if you lock onto this buzzing and tingling, which is called sukshma in Sanskrit, that anxiety becomes something like butterflies. It's really sort of nice. And that the problem is your relationship to this sensation, which is derived from your past experience, something called samskaras, that our history with fear, our history with pain, our history with anxiety sort of hues and alters our relationship to it as it manifests now. And until, again, worked through, will always impede on our relationship with the world. The world is anxious. The world has anxiety. The world has fear. We can't escape from it. And so the yogis are sort of bolstering their capacity to tolerate and embrace that, essentially immunizing themselves from this, a huge part of reality, so that they can, again, sort of rise above Maya, rise above the perceptions of an animal mind, really. Okay, and so what's really going on is the breath technique is actually creating anxiety and is releasing, the hormones and the neurotransmitters that generate those emotions. But in a deeper sort of psychological sense, what we are attempting to do is disassociate from the mind itself. And so most of us are locked in the mind. That's sort of the back wall. We can't go past the mind. Where else is there to go? And the yogis have sort of, through this practice, found a way, at least experientially, behind the mind, so that even the mind, starts to hold less influence over us. And so it's just something to consider. It's a way of reframing your relationship to it. Essentially what we're doing is we are exposing ourselves to this reality, fear and dread and dukh, and through that we are learning to become tolerant of it. And so long story short, do your best, take as much as you can take, but don't take any more. Hold your breath for as long as you intuitively feel you should, but never, back down completely. Never cower completely away from this technique. Consider it a process, and that you are, in a really powerful way, building a tolerance to a stress that plagues many, but doesn't have to plague us all. And again, the metaphor of Vishnu sitting on top of this snake is sort of the wisdom of these ancient cultures, attempting to sort of push this out into future generations, saying that this is super important and super possible. You can immunize yourself, again, from fear, by exposing yourself to it and then ultimately befriending it. And this is what you're doing. So it's super powerful, courageous, noble work, as I've said many times, and hopefully this conversation has inspired those of you that are, sort of like against the wall in terms of like the intensity, because it is building, to move forward bravely, but at your own pace, of course. Cool, sweet. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna spend half the session again just working with this inhale, holding the breath. We're gonna break down and sort of design that process a little bit more than yesterday, and then we're gonna shift into our regular KUMBHAKA training and hopefully that'll give you a sense of control over at least half of your technique, the inhale hold. And so this is what we're gonna do for the first half. You're gonna take deep, mindful, but emphasis on the deep and expansive breaths in through the nose. And so in that, feel free to move and adjust yourself to sort of touch different parts of your body. You want your inhale to inflate in 360 degrees, forward, backwards, left, right, up, and down, in the belly or the abdomen, and also in the torso. And so when I'm trying to sort of like expand upon my lung volume, I'll open my chest to like sort of get into my belly. When I'm trying to breathe into my back, I'll flex my spine a little bit to feel the stretch in the kidney band. And I'll essentially do the same, wobbling through my planes to create that volume. And so you'll inhale. And then with your exhale, take the time to exhale through your mouth. If you exhale right now through your nose, and everyone take a second, and then finish off with your mouth, you'll find there's like more breath to push out that only seems to come out through the mouth. And so the reason we're trying to completely empty the lungs of the air is so that we can breathe in as much fresh air as possible, and in that give you as much time as you can in this antar kumbhaka, in this internal retention. And so you're going to take 3 breaths like this. Deep inhale through the nose, wiggling and adjusting to find space. Exhale through the mouth, vacate every ounce of air 3 times. And then a huge gulp of breath through the mouth. Little sip at the end to just sort of like, again, play with this lung volume. And then just hold, relax your body and visualize. And then, push the edge, tolerate as much as you can tolerate, and then breathe normally. Then you're gonna take 3 breaths in again, inhale, hold for as long as you can, tolerate as much as you can tolerate, 3 breaths, so on and so forth. Again, really working this visualization thing. And then we'll shift into our standard breath technique. Cool, so that's about it. Again, we're focusing on, just to throw the terms at you one more time, antar, A-N-T-A-R, antar kumbhaka, internal retention. Philosophically, there is no problem. You are manifesting anxiety because of your past. It is not the technique. Literally, it is the technique. The more you hold your breath, you are going to sort of generate the hormones and the neurotransmitters that create fear. But despite that, you are trying to find something that is immune to your own thought process. And again, all of this depends on, and the success is sort of created through your willingness to just stay in front of it, to look it in the eyes and to expose yourself to those emotions, wherever they might come from. Exposure is the key, and trusting that it's actually okay is very powerful. All right, good work, everyone. Let's do this. So powerful seated position. The first half of a session is more technical. And so let's just take some deep breaths in and out through the mouth. And as you breathe in, slowly again, move the body through your planes. Open the belly forward, flex the spine, stretch the back of your kidneys or the kidney band. And as you move the tissues and adjust these internal cavities, you can find little pockets of space to deepen your inhale. So you're stretching and expanding. And then completely emptying the lungs by exhaling through the breath. Alrighty. Now take 3 breaths and then a huge gulp of air to hold your breath. Once you're holding your breath, visualize the sun in a blue sky, stars, wind moving through trees, a lake. The more you trust that visualization, the more repressed the signals of the amygdala will be. And in that, even though one section of your brain is firing in panic, another section of your brain subdues that from rising into consciousness. And that affects the way your body interacts with its reality. So trust your visualizations. Sometimes it helps just to know what's going on. It's been proven through experiments that we'd prefer to take calculated risks once we know what's going on, rather than dealing with ambiguity. The mystery is what terrifies us. So what are you feeling right now? You are not in danger. And I think you viscerally and instinctually know that. So it's just the intensity of sensation. What you are experiencing is acidity. Your pH is changing. And your brain is very, very, very sensitive to that pH. we have a very low CO2 tolerance, which is helpful. Our bodies want to know immediately when we are not exchanging air. But it's like a car alarm that is far too sensitive. So as the acidity builds, the sense of heat increases, and then muscles start to tighten and grip. The contracting of muscles is a response of the nervous system. Preparing to run, preparing to clench our teeth to brace for impact, the body attempting to force the rib cage to move, the diaphragm to contract. So let the body burn up. Let the muscles solidify and tighten. Focus on the buzzing and tingling inside the nerves, inside the chest, inside the belly. And trust that the problem is not the technique. The confusion is in our relationship to anxiety itself. Embrace the anxiety. Notice how awake you are as it all intensifies. Notice how present you are as the sensations increase. For a flash, there is only this moment. Okay, from here, let's all go to a 1:1:1:1 ratio. Easy kumbhaka. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. Notice the qualities of your retention in comparison to when you breathe in and out. The second you hold your breath, there's a boost in presence and alertness, like a deer lifting its ears because it heard a twig break behind it. The second you hold your breath, your brain recognizes it. like pulling gold from mountains. We are extracting consciousness from our neurology. And a time-tested tool to do that is anxiety. Non-dualistic anxiety, the butterflies of excitement, the quickening of anticipation. Once we can trust these sensations, then we sit upon Adasesh, then we sit upon this mythological symbol of a multi-headed snake. And Maya, the rip currents of misperception, of good and bad, of dangerous and safe, of success and failure, all of that exists beneath us. Last round of Kumbhaka, inhale, hold, exhale, hold. In the final retention, when your lungs are empty, Baya Kumbhaka, hold again for as long as you can. After that point, breathe steadily through the nose and just listen to your morning. Now, all pranayama, all breathing strategies do not induce anxiety. Some induce shanti, some induce tranquility. Slow, diaphragmatic, belly breathing, especially the exhale. So take the time to balance the scale now. And appreciate it's only because of that journey into anxiousness, that journey into aliveness and intensity and challenge, that the tranquility of just sitting is so pronounced. With an inhale, reach your arms up and over your head. A lot of energy. And attempt to impose a balance between the anxiousness and quickening and wakefulness of those long holds and the tranquility of those slow diaphragmatic breaths. And with an exhale, as your hands fall to your heart, imagine settling into that balance. Imagine resting on the mythological snake. And for a second, it should feel more real that I am at least above myself in this moment, and in that I have a wider field of vision of my day, my being, my world. Memorize this space. This isn't just a thought detached from the physical world. This is a certain firing of patterns within the brain. And every time you authentically feel it, those patterns become more likely to occur again naturally. Thumb knuckles to third eye center. Laser point focus. For a second, it's only you. Anxiety is some distant world, as is peace. The body, a distant world. Identify this as the home of your practice, the temple of your work. And as you feel it, just say namaste. We're building a ritual. Namaste to this space. I recognize you in the thicket of thoughts, in the mess of conflicting personas. There is this point. Release your wrist to your knees, random finger to each thumb. And with an inhale, open your eyes and perceive it as that ocean. A world of left turns and right turns, of dangerous spaces and safe spaces, of success and failure. It seems very real, but the more connected we are to that inner space, the easier it is to navigate it at least. Maybe one day we can rise above it entirely. That's the great and mystical hope.